Alasdair will be delivering his presentation, Automating Data Compliance, Enabling Analytics while Maintaining Privacy. Following the presentation, we will have a short Q&A session with Alasdair. If any of our audience members have any questions for Alasdair, please use the Q&A function in Zoom, and I will deliver them to Alasdair post-presentation. Reminder for you that you can also visit Protegrity at their virtual booth in the exhibitor hall. Alasdair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Another one of the working from home benefits. I don't have to gingerly walk onto a stage and try not to drop the microphone. I do, however, have to share a screen, so hopefully this will go well. Okay, so what I'm going to talk today about is the challenges that we face in industry with the need to protect our information, but at the same time not compromise the utility of that data. And we find that's a specifically acute problem in the world of compliance. So we as a software company are very much focused on that problem. How do we enable analytics and artificial intelligence without compromising privacy? So how do we do secure analytics and secure AI? And what I'll talk about is how we look at this challenge and the solution that we've developed for that. But I'll spend a lot of time looking at real world examples of how our software and other software has been deployed to cope with these challenges and really have with a future focus of what we feel the world is moving towards. So let me just introduce myself. My name is Alasdair Anderson. I am the General Manager for the EMEA region. My background is primarily financial services. I spent most recently some time at ABN AMRO in Amsterdam, Nordea Bank in Copenhagen, HSBC, JP Morgan, BNP Paribas, and of course as part of my Scottish National Service, RBS. But all of these organisations, I was really dealing with the same problem, the same challenges. How do we make data available? How do we put it in the hands of the people that need to use that information? But how do we do that without compromising privacy, without compromising justifiable usage, without compromising governance? And having dealt with that problem many times in many organizations, I really wanted to be part of an organization that did something across verticals and across the industry. And that's what's brought me to Protegrity and really focused on solving that challenge as much as possible across any vertical and also the public sector and government organizations. So what really is the challenge? Well, for me, there's two sort of macro mega trends, if you like. We have the unbelievably unstoppable journey of digital transformation. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that digital is here forever, and probably it's going to be exclusively the way that we interact as a society. We expect to be able to run our life from our mobile phones. We expect to be able to do all of our core functions from our phones, whether that be governmental, whether that be just day-to-day living, shopping, whether it be the more enjoyable parts of life, which somewhat denied to us right now, but certainly there's no question that 2020 has accelerated that journey. At the same time, and it's not just driven by legislation, the concerns about appropriate usage of information, ethical use of data, and general need to know has never been higher, and it seems to be almost directly correlated to digital transformation. The more information that is utilized and gathered on individuals and organizations, the more that we become slightly uncomfortable with, is this an appropriate usage of data and information? And this is not just my opinion. You can see these numbers, and I'm sure all of the presentations in this conference have a similar type of slide. All of these numbers are undeniable and massive. The compound annual growth rate within digital transformation is huge. I mean, projections for 2025 and 2018 have just been knocked off the scale by the COVID crisis in 2020. This journey that we are on as a society is only gathering pace. And it's you know, there's very many examples of just how people's expectations have completely changed. No one is really prepared to change the way that they interact to the way that a company or a government agency work. People expect a personalization of service. They expect that you understand who they are. At the same time, regulators expect that we, as an organization, understand who we're dealing with and what activities we are supporting. And that takes us to, you know, a real challenge that we have, and certainly one that I saw within the banking industry, but one that is prevalent within other industries. That if you want to be a compliant organization, you really have to utilize the data that you have. I spent probably the last decade of my financial services career working on anti-financial crime platforms. So looking for terrorist financing, looking for sanctions breaches, looking for money laundering. Now, the industry, you only have to read the newspapers, is still struggling with these challenges. And part of the struggle that we have is that making data available to enable organizations to combat these evils in our world is really quite difficult. And we are uncomfortable as I think as a society, but certainly as an industry, and I think our regulators are uncomfortable as well, that that data can be used without appropriate checks and balances. And therefore, we have this dichotomy where in order to be a compliant world, we have to utilize the information which itself is under increasing pressure to be used within a compliant manner. So the question then becomes, how do you use information for these challenges in these day-to-day activities without compromising your privacy? And that's really where Protegrity specializes. We do a lot of things, and if you want to go to the booth and speak to our guys, they'll take you through a very deep catalogue of capabilities. But what is our secret sauce? Our secret sauce is a patented tokenization solution, which is a big word to say we take data, we remove sensitive data from your operational systems, and we replace it with a format preserved token. Now, why is format preserving important? It's important because within your data sets, it maintains your referential integrity, which if you have a data modeler or you are a data modeler, will tell you that's what you need in order to run your reports, your analytical models, and your artificial intelligence. You need to have consistent, concise, accurate data. Now, you can do that with data in the clear. You know, so if you encrypt your data and you want to use it, you have to decrypt it and then you can use it in the clear. But as we all know, that then means that you have to control access and it becomes a human process. What our solution does is to take that data, tokenize it, replace it within your data sets, but maintain its utility so that the information can be used in all of your reporting, analytics, even your digital channels, without ever compromising a person's right to privacy. So this allows you to deploy it in those downside risks like money laundering and KYC and all these sorts of things that go on, tax evasion analysis, so on and so forth. But at the same time, that same capability for enhanced privacy is absolutely critical to your digital channels. So you can ensure that only your individual customer gets to see their data. It is disguised from the operational staff, and it's only made available on a need-to-know basis. We do this in an automatic and scalable fashion. We're deployed across some of the biggest Fortune 500 brands in the planet, and we have been for over 15 years. But that's the product catalog. Let me take you through, and really, as I go through these examples of what people do with our technology, what people use our technology for. And again, I have to emphasize that's in combination with a lot of common technologies that you already use today. You'll see really where the world is going. I'll take you through examples of the public sector, some private sector, the banking industry, and then we'll see where we'll start to discuss where we feel this capability is going, which is secure AI, the ability to deploy artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced analytics in a privacy-enabled manner. So my first example is actually, it's anonymized, of course, but it's we have multiple tax agencies as clients. Depending on where you live, and I think I mentioned earlier, I used to work for Nordea Bank in Copenhagen, where Nordic people can log on to the tax system and see what their neighbour earned last year. Most societies don't have that level of openness, and as individuals, we really take our tax information as perhaps the most personal of information. We have deployments in multiple agencies, and what that allows us to do is really protect that information, but also enable those agencies to be able to utilize that information without compromising the privacy of both the personal details of the person, but also their tax affairs. Now, you've got two different examples. Actually, these are two different countries within the European Union. One country takes the approach that this sort of protection should only be afforded to people who perhaps the information could compromise them and they are in a position of influence. So we've given the examples here of the royal family, the security services, members of the government, members of the parliament. That tax agency take that information and deploy our tokenization solution, which again allows them to go through their normal functions of investigation, economic projections, and in some cases police action, without ever making that information available to the person who is not entitled to see, which is to say you get an ability to have a sort of center of excellence approach to your analytics and reporting. You can deploy, you can give the data to your IT folks. They never see that super sensitive information. And only when it reaches the sort of chain of custody that is appropriate, then that person can see the data that they need to see. So in some cases, this might be the police force. The other example on the right-hand side is actually a mainland European tax agency where they are a bit more libertarian about things and they do not see a differential between the man in the street and the king of the country. And therefore, they secure all their information for all their 17 million citizens across their entire platform, again, enabling all these critical functions. This, for me, is actually quite a sort of meat and bread type example. This is what vanilla looks like in our world. What I want to take you through now is what sort of state of the art and privacy design looks like in the financial services industry. This is probably the most technical slide. I know it's very high level, but this is certainly the most tech heavy deployment. And it's not that technology guarantees privacy and security. Actually, if you look at your mobile phone and the apps that are on it, you'll find an example of someone who has used data inappropriately at some point or had some sort of leakage type event. It's far from it. But really what this emphasizes is that this organization has understood some of the core privacy concepts. We talk about privacy by design, but they've actually evolved that to privacy by build. So a lot of these financial services institutions still are hand cranking their own code. And therefore, in order to really be compliant with the principles of privacy by design, they understand that they have to bake that into their technology build process. They have to ensure that the privacy controls are baked into how their code is actually deployed into production. Now, what this allows them to do is two things, two very important things, because any one of, I mentioned before, I worked at HSBC, 250,000 people, 40,000 technology developers, very difficult to have a single command and control plane. What this example does with two of our clients actually do this, is it allows the governance, control, and policy function to be centralized. There is one policy for the entire organization, or one set of policies for the entire organization. There is one operational team for data privacy. They work with one compliance team and who are adherent to the governance team. That is all centralized, but there's no way you can centralize the sort of build of bank.exe. What you have to do is have a federated approach to how that's developed. And the way that our clients have done it, which I think is super sophisticated, is to embed that in their actual development operations process, their DevOps process. And that allows them to define a set of standards, allows them to scan their data models for sensitive data. That metadata declaration is then placed into the build artifacts, and it's auto-protected. So every time they make a change, they bake that into what they do, and that is rolled out into production. There is no human in the loop. The data is auto-protected. So that is adopted by all their development teams, and that is done as a business as usual process. There is no way for someone to circumvent that. A product cannot go live until it has adhered to these build standards. It cannot go into production. It doesn't get production data until it's in production. So it's a superb example of how you can really enable privacy by design by actually adopting it within your core way of working. Now, technology that we've got allows that data to then be accessed through the integration with authentication authorization solutions. So if you're in the marketing department, you don't have really any justifiable reason to view personal information. You have justifiable reason to use pseudo-anonymized information, anonymized information, aggregated information, but not personal information. But through our gateway technology, you can log in and you can access that data without ever compromising that privacy posture. However, if you're in the anti-financial crime team and you are looking for a suspected network of money launderers, you do have the authorization on a break glass ability to see personal data, but you can still run all of your analytics until you get to that break glass point, which is to say you can run your model, you can get what you think is a hit, you can verify that data further, and then at the point of I am ready to go to the regulator, or in some countries, certainly in Denmark where I was, it would go straight to the police. You then de-identify that information. And that can be on a sort of trusted basis that actually your analyst never gets to see that information, only the police officer does. So very sophisticated technology posture, but actually a sort of fundamental core capability within the entire organization that this is the right way to do things. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk to is what I would see is where we see the industry going. It is very much a case that people want to utilize that information, and not all information is equal. I mean, we talk about personal information, private information, sensitive information. In this example, which is, I would say actually they're more a content company, but certainly their core audience is children. So you have that fundamental sort of nervousness in the organization that is there anything more precious as an asset as children and children's data? Could we place a higher value on anything? Probably not. Certainly, as a parent myself, I certainly wouldn't argue with that point. But that doesn't mean that we should deny children, who are probably our most advanced consumers, from having a great experience when they are, on the platforms and using their technology. So there's two things to point out here. Number one is that this company have built a private social media network with massive inbuilt protections for kids to interact with each other in a safe way. And we are, part of that journey, which gives me immense pride, actually. But the really interesting part, and the part that I think is where the industry is going, is that they also want to utilize advanced analytics and machine learning, but they have a company ethos is that we will not try to upsell, force-sell children products. So their recommendations have to be adherent to their principles within the use of analytics and artificial intelligence, which is to say they want a great ethical basis for the technology that they deploy and the experience that the children have. So they are very much in tune with our roadmap that we are working on the enablement of secure and ethical AI. And that takes us, I think, past just the base world of security into is this an appropriate use of data, and how do we completely anonymize information in order to help that experience without ever compromising, the outcome of what happens. So really, three real world examples there of stuff that's out there in the wild. Just to summarize up, really what we do is pretty fundamental. Is we remove operational risk from your data set. We deploy our tokenization solution to make sure that personal information need never be compromised in the day-to-day running of a business, the digital channel of a business, the operational reports, the risk reports, the analytical intelligence that's getting built up. That can be protected. And it can be protected in an automated and highly scalable way that never compromises the information that is fundamentally built on. Okay, so that is pretty much a sort of Nirvana type solution. If you have 20,000 databases, it takes a while to roll out. But certainly that is what is available to you today. Where we're going, though, is the complete automation of that process, and that extending into the artificial intelligence and advanced analytics space, and having a fundamental lever on the efficacy of how data is used and for what purpose. And like all vendors, we promise increased profit. I think if I was asked to make a 2021 prediction, I think the ability to automate, reduce overhead, reduce cost, and then increase, the sort of the share of the market, the share of the wallet, is going to be fundamental as to how we recover in 2021. The society has come together, I think, in a very admirable way. I know there's been bumps along the road, but we have sort of we've built up a debt that has to be paid back, and that's really best paid back by increased economic performance. And we are very, very adamant that we can do that without compromising any of the information protections and privacy concerns that the society has. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alasdair. So, ladies and gentlemen, yes, if you wish to ask any questions to Alasdair, please use the Q&A function built in. We have a couple of questions that have come through already, Alasdair. The first one is, how does Protegrity approach the different regulations, operating methods, and technical choices global business might have?
Sorry, Ben, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, of course. The question is, how does Protegrity approach the different regulations, operating methods, and technical choices that a global business might have?
Well, we have a suite of products that allow you to basically have a differential approach to your privacy. What we find is that there is no one size fits all. So especially in global organizations, you will have sort of three things at any one time. You will have the jurisdiction of residency, the jurisdiction perhaps of consumption. So if you have a data set headquartered in London with UK data, and that is used by a team in Poland, say, you then have to work out how the different legislations interact with each other. And then you also have to work out, and then GDPR is going this way as well, you have to work out the appropriate protections required for data transfer, utilization, and consumption. Now, Protegrity has a sliding scale of suites and tools that allow you to, we obviously believe our tokenization is unique, and it is unique, but it's also it's got high value of utility. But at the same time, you can redact the information, you can encrypt it if you want, you can protect it many ways. Our gateway technology actually allows you to manage authorizations for different countries. So what you typically end up with in international companies is a sort of matrix of jurisdiction and usage to say what can be used with what data at what place. What Protegrity does is we're there with the capabilities that allows you to enforce that jurisdictional policy.
Thanks, Alasdair. We've got a couple of other questions that have come in. Can you elaborate on a use case where Protegrity has made data available for organizations for day-to-day activities, still kept it protected?
Yeah, very recent example. We did a pilot with within the airline industry, so one of the big airlines, perhaps the world's favourite. We showed that it was possible to run. They're on a cloud journey. They're moving their data to the cloud. They want to make sure that as they move to the cloud, it's an opportunity to enhance their privacy. They showed that, or we did within the pilot, show that it was possible to run your analytics in the cloud on protected data. A lot of sort of business intelligence and modeling within the loyalty card space allow them to do targeting, but at the same time we showed that it was possible to put on a digital check-in where a steward on an aircraft could actually see the passenger's name, and that was the only channel that was able to that staff, and they were secure card checked, and they're able to see that information on an iPad in real time in the terminal without that information ever being in the clear anywhere else. So certainly it's and that's an industry, like when I get back to the point of, you know, we all need to look to bounce back. Airlines is one industry where we have actually helped out in terms of supporting over this year, and we see them as a definite recovery candidate, and that capability to personalize the journey and help people when they return to the skies, I think would be a really good example of stuff in the live that's working today.
Perfect. And another question that's coming, which I think more than anyone else you should be able to answer, with it relating to the financial sector. One of our attendees has asked, at a multinational bank with cross-border data, how would you protect PII adhering to GDPR regulation? We're moving to the cloud from multi on-prem in the next couple of years, probably Google Cloud.
Yeah, I'll state the obvious. The clouds have got great security, right? So it's really not a security challenge. You know, never say never, but you know, the chances of GCP, AWS, Azure getting hacked are fairly limited. It's more likely to be human error on the consumer side. What the challenge is, as the question alludes to, is not where your data center is what is your data, how have you protected it, and how are you managing access to that information. So there's 2 points that I would make. Is one is that is a complex process within financial services. It involves legal, compliance, technology governance, business governance, and you have to build up a matrix of what is appropriate where. The second point is, obviously, we believe that the best solution to lowering your risk profile is to remove your PII information from the data set, replace with tokens, and then only allow access to data in the clear on a break glass capability. So you can certainly make up an argument within GDPR definitions that pseudo-anonymization is very much part of your privacy by design control framework, and that will allow you to justify to the regulators that you have taken appropriate privacy enhancing steps. And certainly the cloud is a big opportunity for people to sort of redesign. It's very difficult within financial services because some of those platforms can be up to 40 years old, to really dig up the roads and change everything. What Protegrity allows you to do is you can protect in the cloud, and then you can do what we call shift left. So if everybody remembers their architect diagrams, it starts with a point of system of record, and then it goes through some transformation and it ends up in the cloud. We can start in the cloud, protect in the cloud, but our protectors go all the way back to IBM mainframe if needs be. So you can shift left and have a full supply chain of privacy enhanced data. Now, when you're speaking to a regulator, you say in the cloud we do this, and then the regulator will immediately say, yes, what do you do in your operational systems? And I would say to you, wouldn't it be a great answer to say exactly the same? Our policy is consistent, and so is our protection, and it scales across all platforms.
We have time for one more very quick question. Does Protegrity have functionality, for example, enforcing hiding employee phone numbers for outgoing business calls, thinking about work from home privacy challenges?
Yes, I mean, is the very short answer. Our genesis 15 years ago, over 15 years ago, was within PCI and credit card protection. So we've been producing the last 4 digits for nearly 2 decades now. And I think it's a great point, though, is that privacy is not a one-time exercise, it's an enhancing exercise. So you're always looking at how has our way of working changed, how's our posture changed, how has our privacy sort of surface changed. And that ability to have a differential approach to privacy allows you to deal with, everybody's working at home and perhaps this information is now needed to certain parties on a certain basis. Fine. Amend your policy, deploy, whole organization, mainframe to cloud, done.
Thank you so much, Alasdair. Thank you for a really, really insightful presentation. Certainly changing my opinion about moving to Denmark in the near future. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
For any other questions you might have for Alasdair and the team at Protegrity, as I say, you can visit their booth in the virtual exhibition hall. Next, we are moving on to Breakout F. I'm delighted to say that we have Fergal Hennigan, Country Manager, and Gary Forsythe, Systems Engineer at Veeam, with their presentation, 6 Reasons Why to Protect 365. So Fergal and Gary, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Thank you everybody for joining the session. We're going to discuss today some important topics around data protection. What I'm going to discuss in the first few slides, I'm just going to talk a little bit around Veeam as an organization for those that might not be familiar with Veeam, and those that are familiar in years gone by, to show you where we are today versus where we were back then as an organization starting up in the virtual environment. So today we're a global software company founded in 2006. Not a legacy backup technology, we're very much at the forefront of technology with the virtualization and the whole data center environment. So Veeam was very much born out of virtualization. So our product was initially focused on the backup for VMware virtualization in the early days, but since that we've added hypervisors and physical machines, enterprise applications, as well as cloud workloads. If we take a look at the numbers, which is a very important factor, Veeam has exceeded $1 billion in annual bookings in 2019, even through a lot of difficult times. It's still thriving as an organization in our annual bookings, and our recurring revenue has increased by 26% year over year. Today, we're looking at, we have more than 365,000 customers worldwide, which is phenomenal growth, and over 4,000 employees and growing again, which is really, really positive news. Our offices are in more than 30 countries. We also have a net promoter score of 75, which we're very, very proud of, showing our customer satisfaction levels are extremely high, bearing in mind that starts at a minus 100 to a plus 100 scale. So we're sitting at 75 on that, which is really, really, really great to see our customers have that view of us, so which is great. So if we move on then and we look at Veeam in terms of what the analysts say about it. So from a Gartner perspective, named leader again in 2019 Magic Quadrant, clear leader in the Ovum, and then also IDC have a lot to say about Veeam on a very, very positive light, which is great. And that bears out fruit from the next slide. When I look at it, I go and we see that the Gartner Quadrant there, where Veeam is a leader again. Again, just summarizing that slide, we have 86% of the Fortune 500 companies, again, 375 customers worldwide and counting, and the Net Promoter Score. So Veeam in the top right-hand corner of the Magic Quadrant on its ability to execute is a very rewarding slide to see, and it's been there for a number of years. So as we move on, we'll talk about the technology in the sense of what Veeam see as important to our customers. So simplicity, which is really, really important, that it's not a backup and data protection and recoverability of can't be a cumbersome day's work for our customers. So a single platform brings together all your data in one place so that you can put it to work. So visibility right across your organization. It also allows you to do things like test and development projects outside the production system, so avoiding any downtime, which is really, really important. And one platform to protect data across the cloud, physical and virtual environment. From a flexibility perspective, it's a software-defined, hardware-agnostic and cloud-ready software. So, I mean, we work alongside a lot of customers that have to reutilize hardware, or looking at some cloud or multi-cloud organizations where they're working with, and Veeam has the flexibility to play across all of these and in a hybrid environment, or purely on-prem or in cloud, whatever the customer's preference might be. A term we use, the reliability, a term that it just works. It's really, really been around for years with Veeam as a mantra. It says it just works, but that is the fact of it. Our customers are attested that when they say 75% on the Net Promoter Score, because it just allows us access to data anytime, anywhere. I mean, beyond business continuity, your data to accelerate your business and drive innovation. And then, of course, we're supporting thousands of customers globally from a data perspective, because it's just purely simple, flexible, and reliable. As we move on to the next slide, when we talk about cloud data management, so organizations that would have known Veeam back in its day would have known, as I said earlier on, around virtualization. Obviously, that is correct. So we have our Veeam backup and recovery of virtual environments. But as Veeam has moved along on its journey, where we have cloud mobility, we have monitoring and analytics, as you can see on the slide there. So we have a technology called Veeam Availability Suite, which supports our Veeam Backup and Replication and our Veeam One technology combined. And that gives you all the monitoring and analytics that you need to know about your whole environment, your virtual environment. Orchestration and automation, and governance and compliance. So these are all very key parts of the environment today. In any environment, whether it's a small, medium, or large enterprise organization, they're looking at the whole area of cloud data management, cloud first strategy, cloud strategy, or that hybrid model that we talk about. So I mean, today our conversation with my colleague Gary, who's going to come on very shortly, will be all around the Veeam Backup for Office 365 that we talk about, which is a very, very strong component within Veeam, but it's a very, very demanding now from a customer perspective where we are today. Again, we're on a new version of that, which shows. I mean, it's not a new kid on the block as regards Veeam goes as an established technology. So I'm around all day today. Gary is around all day today. He's going to come on now, and then we also have our colleague Raluca at the booth. So please do come and visit us. We're there for the day. We can talk about anything from a Veeam perspective, data protection, that you guys would like to talk about. To that, I'm going to hand it over to Gary, and I'll be here to support and answer any questions that need to come along. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gary.
Just Fergal. So, as Fergal mentioned there, so my name's Gary Forsythe. I'm a systems engineer at Veeam. Today I'm going to cover Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, and more so the sheer responsibility from backing up Office 365. So a typical question we get asked is, why do I need to back up my Office 365? Microsoft takes care of it. You know, I'm bought my software as a service, I've got my mail, I've got my SharePoint. But the reality is, what you're actually getting from Microsoft is the infrastructure. They're guaranteeing that they'll have the infrastructure in place, which you then put your data onto, so your mail, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, and your Teams data as well. So we can see from the shared responsibility, if I just break this slide out a little bit, so what we have is, the primary responsibility from Microsoft is about the uptime, making sure you can access the data, make sure you have access to the services that you're getting provided from. They're going to put in replication from DC to DC, so if they do have an issue, it means you can still get access to your data. And they have like a retention for the recycle bin. So if you delete something, yes, it goes into a recycle bin, but if it gets hard deleted, you can lose that data. And from a security level, they obviously, from the infrastructure, they make sure that's secure, and they have the role as a data processor as well. But the responsibility that falls onto the end user, customer, is it is your data. You need to manage that data. You need to make sure it's protected. If you have compliance that you need to keep that data for 3 years, for 5 years, for 7, you need to have it in a separate location. You need to make sure that you have that in place. So the 6 reasons why you need an Office 365 backup is, one of them is accidental deletion. That could be myself just accidentally deleting it. I could even do a hard delete, it's gone if I can't get it back. It could even be retention policy gaps. So within Microsoft, yeah, they do set retention on the data. So you have that deleted items for X amount of days. You then have the archive for X amount of days. But that's not giving you a copy of your data. It's not moving the data off and giving you that, yes, I've got another copy and I know I'm keeping it for a set number of days or years. Internal security threats. Malicious insider, department employees, somebody's moving from the business, they decide just delete the data. I'm going to hard delete that. That data's gone. You don't know it's been deleted until, could be days, could be months down the line when you need access to that data and it's no longer there. External security threats, ransomware, viruses, rogue apps. It's been prevalent all through the year. We've seen ransomware getting more and more. They're getting more advanced in what they do. So if you get corruption, if you get encryption, how can you protect against that as well? And even from legal and compliance, again, it comes back to, do you have a copy of your data? Can you prove you've got a copy of that data? And can you get it back after a set period of time? And it could even be you've not done the whole journey to the cloud yet. So you may have Office 365, you're looking to move to your whole 365 mail, but you're still running on-premise Exchange as well, and you want to protect both your on-premise and you want to protect in the cloud as well. So it's giving you that option. When we did send out the title for this, it was 6 reasons why you need Office 365 backup. As of Monday or Tuesday last week, I think it was, we released version 5 of Veeam Backup through 365, and that's now given us a 7th reason. So what that's allowing us to do is Teams data. Now, previously we could protect Teams data, but it was more of a manual process because you had to back up what was in Exchange, what was in SharePoint, and what was in OneDrive. And to bring it back, it was more of a manual process as well. You had to recreate the teams, manually bring that data back in. But as we've seen over this year, working from home, remote workers, Teams data has becoming more and more in use. So it is becoming, we need to protect that data. We need to make sure that it's protected and we can get access to it if something does happen. So what does Microsoft actually back up? So if you look at this slide here, we have our inbox. So typically you've got here, it'll go on for so long that it moves into the archive. If you delete an item, you get 30 days in deleted items. Then it gets permanently deleted. With SharePoint and OneDrive, you have 30 days. It then moves into a second stage, up to 90 days. Then it's permanently deleted. So if you go beyond this point, it makes it a bit harder to get the data back. And what we're seeing is the average length of time from data compromise. So I've deleted an item or it's been maliciously deleted. I don't realize it. It's over 140 days, but what's in place by default is well beyond that permanently deleted item. So what does Veeam offer from that standpoint? So what Veeam does is it takes those retention policies, but it also allows you to have a second copy of that data. Now, you can then protect that from, you can see here, from 1 week to 5 years, but 5 years plus. You set the retention on that data. You also set where you want to move that data to, whether that's on-premise or whether it's in the cloud as well. So you then expand across all your items from your email, your archive, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, and your Teams data. Just to cover a little bit on the architecture. So this is it's a pretty busy slide, but I'll cover it and we'll go over it. So what we have is you have your Office 365 data. So that's your Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and your Microsoft Teams data. You may have on-premise Exchange and SharePoint as well. But what that allows us to do is have Veeam Backup for Office 365. This can be installed on a virtual machine, which can be on-premise. It can be in the cloud of your choice. It's also in Azure and AWS Marketplace. And this could also be a physical box if you want to put in a physical box as well. But what that allows us to do is then back up this data. And it goes into, we can use object storage directly, so AWS, S3 compatible, or Microsoft Azure Blob as well. If you're not wanting to move the data to the cloud, you can bring it back to on-premise as well. We fully support that, but we can bring it to local storage, or it could even be local S3 compliant storage as well. So if you have an appliance you want to put in, which is S3 compatible, you can bring that in as well. Once you've backed up the data, we have what we call Veeam Explorers. So you can see here we have one for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. These have been developed over the years. They're not only used in Microsoft Office, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office, they're also used in our Veeam Backup and replication software as well. So if you have used that software in the past and you've used Exchange and SharePoint recovery, it's exactly the same Explorer. It's the same look and feel. Everything feels the same. And that gives us our recovery options to recover to on-premise or into the cloud. It gives you 40 ways to restore. Now, why do you need 40 different ways to restore? Well, you don't, but it gives you choice. It gives you what you need to use. If there's one thing you want to use and you prefer it, it gives you that option. This is a very, very busy slide. I'm not going to cover everything in this, but this shows you the options that we have. So you can, for example, in Exchange, we have restore it back to on-premise, restore it to the cloud, save it as an attachment, save it as a message file or a PST, but you can see we have that across the multiple options within Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, and Exchange Online and on-premises. So when we're using the Veeam Explorers, that's just an example of the GUI as well. So once you have the backup, you see you have the multiple options. You can restore latest exchange or point in time, SharePoint or point in time, OneDrive point in time as well, and Teams data or back to a point in time. So if you have a year's worth of backups, you can go back to any point in time from your retention policy and recover that data. To break it out a little bit, for the Explorer for Microsoft Exchange, you can see here we have our mailbox store. And in this one, we're in Rihanna Key, and we have our inbox. But what we can do, we can restore that whole mailbox. We can restore individual folders, the calendar. You can see here on inbox, we can restore back the inbox back to its original location. We can take it back out to different locations. That could be moving it from O365 to on-premise. We can put it out to a PST file. We can save it out to a message file. We can even email it back to the user as well. What is good with this is the compare with production. So if you have a user, maybe comes in, I've deleted some data, I'm not sure what I've deleted, we can actually do a compare with production. It'll look at the backup that we're looking at, compare it with actual live production, and what it'll do is it'll populate this column over here, the item state, and it'll say whether it's been deleted or moved, etc. And that allows you then to quickly see what has been moved or what has been deleted. And you can quickly restore that back to the original location, or even send it back as a PST file, for example, to say this is the data that's been deleted, import what you want to bring back in. We also have advanced find, which is like a e-discovery type option, but it allows us to go, for example, into this inbox, and we can run to say from the from field, it contains Gary, and then I can also set another criteria to say only from 1st of July to the 1st of August, and I can then start to build up a criteria, build that down, and only see the data which is within that criteria. I can then export that out to a PST file as well, or even email it. We also have the Explorer for SharePoint. You can see the look and feel is very, very similar. So we have our SharePoint sites. This is showing personal SharePoint sites, but again, if this was your main SharePoint sites, you can actually bring back the whole site. You can bring back the containers. You can bring back the documents as well. So you can actually restore individual documents or even save the documents out. If you see from here, we also, if you have versioning enabled, we can bring back the different versions. This is version 2, but we could browse that and look at all the versions behind it and restore that versioning as well. And we have that advanced find feature as well that I explained on the previous slide. We have that from within SharePoint as well. We have the Explorer for OneDrive. You can see as I go through this, it's very much the same look and feel. I can bring back the whole OneDrive. I can then bring back individual folders or files. So I can restore the document, copy the document, save the document, even email the document. And we have that versioning as well. Plus we have the advanced find feature. This is the new edition in version 5. So once we back up the teams, we actually have the way of bringing back the whole team. So if you delete the whole team, we can restore the team back. We can also bring back the channels. We can bring back individual posts, and we can bring back individual files as well. And that also includes the versioning. And we also have that advanced find. So it's basically making it a lot easier and an easier way to automate the recoverability of teams data, which we didn't have before. That's me pretty much covered this slide. So it's really, is there any questions around what we've just covered?
Again, just as a reminder to the audience, if you use the Q&A function built within the platform to ask any questions to Gary and Fergal. I'll give it a minute, guys, just see if anything comes up.
Okay. So if there's no questions coming in at the minute, we, as Fergal mentioned, both myself and Fergal are going to be at our booth. So feel free to drop by, come talk to us. And if there's any questions you want to even come and ask us about this or being backup replication, etc., let us know. You get any remarks, Fergal, before we move on?
I suppose just before we finish off, to cover off maybe around the licensing side of the way the Office 365 backup for Office 365 is licensed. So we license the technology per user per year. So it has options. So you could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, subscription-based licensing. So it's important that you're not actually paying for something that you're not using. So it's scalable, so it can scale up, and the licensing is sold in packs of 10, so therefore it can be added quite easily into the environment if people do. We can also repurpose the licenses as well. So if somebody was to leave the organization, that license can be repurposed back into the organization. So again, it's not sitting there as idle or a waste of money within the organization. So just to summarize, it's licensed on a subscription basis. It can be licensed for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, and it covers SharePoint Online, SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange Online, I should say, and Teams. So it encompasses all that Gary just spoke about within the one user license.
And a question from Reluca is saying, what about shared email boxes?
Okay, yes, so it doesn't. We don't penalize people for having shared mailboxes, so we license it on the user count. So if Microsoft, for argument's sake, if an organization has 1,000 Microsoft licenses, they would need to back up 1,000 users. So we don't penalize users for having multiple mailboxes, shared mailboxes, I should say.
Perfect, thank you, Fergal. I'll just give it another minute or so to see if any other questions filter through. And just while we're waiting to see if any other questions do come in. Oh, Reluca's got another one there. Do you have a limit of the data that is backed up per user?
Jumping on that one. There is no limit. So the licensing is based on user count. So if it doesn't matter what sits behind that user, whether it's mailbox data, SharePoint, or OneDrive, it's included in that license.
Gary. So yeah, just as a reminder for everyone, for both presentations today and indeed all of the content throughout the day, it will be on demand post-event as well. So if you want to revisit the Veeam talk or the Protegrity talk, you can watch them on demand post-event as well on the platform and on the Digit YouTube channel. No other questions coming through at the moment. So Fergal and Gary, thank you so much for your presentation. Please do go and talk to the guys at the booth. That'll be open all afternoon.
Ben, Ben, I beg your pardon for cutting across. May I just mention to the audience as well that once we cover off Veeam Backup for Office 365 today, it was very specific. We've had some recent announcements around AWS, and we have some stuff coming down the line in terms of new releases on our Veeam Backup replication, our flagship technology. So we're happy to have those conversations at the booth as well. So it's there's a lot going on at Veeam at the moment. Very difficult to cover it all in a 25 half an hour. So happy to have those conversations throughout the day.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ben.
No problem at all. Thank you, Fergal, and thank you, Gary. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
For any other conversations, please do visit the booth. But for now, thank you all for watching, and we will see you shortly.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.